Hi, it's Miss Patty with Sunday School. Happy Easter! Today, instead of having our regular lesson, I'm going to read you the story of the very first Easter. You know who that is. Move this over a little bit. This is called The Story of the First Easter. Jesus had been staying in Bethany, where his friends Martha, Mary, and Lazarus lived. But he knew that the time had come for him to go to Jerusalem. The people in Jerusalem wanted him to be their king, but Jesus knew that his Father in heaven had something even more important for him to do. Try and move this so that the camera and the book are in the best place. How's that? As Jesus approached Jerusalem, many people went out to meet him, waving palm branches. The people knew who he was, and they were very excited to see him. "Hosanna to the Son of David," they shouted. "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." They knew he was the Messiah. Several days later was Passover. This was the celebration of the holy day when God delivered the children of Israel from the Egyptians. Jesus and his 12 disciples got together at a friend's house in Jerusalem for a special Passover supper. Let's count them. There's Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. As they were eating, Jesus took some bread and he blessed it and he broke it. He passed it out to his disciples and he said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body." Then he took his cup, gave thanks, and said, "All of you drink from it. This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for the forgiveness of sins." Well, was the bread really Jesus' body? Was the cup that they drank from, was that really his blood? No, those were symbols to remind us of what Jesus did for us. Everybody was happy that they could be together for the special supper, but Jesus seemed a little sad. He looked around the table at his disciples and said, "One of you will turn me over to our enemies." 11 of his disciples couldn't believe their ears, but Judas knew what Jesus was talking about. Which one do you think is supposed to be Judas in this picture? I feel like it's probably this one. After supper, Jesus took his disciples to the Mount of Olives. Then Peter, James, and John went with Jesus to a grove of olive trees called the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus often went to the place with his disciples to pray and rest. Jesus went among the trees and knelt down to pray. He asked God the Father to help him face what he knew was going to happen soon. Jesus knew it was going to be a hard time for him. When Jesus came back to the disciples, he found them sleeping and asked them to pray with him. But it's kind of hard for me to read. I don't have very good light in here. But they fell asleep again. He went and prayed 2 more times. When the disciples awoke, they heard the noise of a crowd and they saw flashing of torches. The crowd was armed with swords, clubs, and spears. Jesus rushed out from the crowd. Judas rushed out from the crowd and greeted Jesus with a kiss, as though he was glad to see him. The crowd knew Judas would kiss Jesus to betray him. They grabbed Jesus and arrested him. There were a lot of times they tried to catch Jesus, and he could get away. Jesus could kind of disappear into the crowd. So this time, the people who wanted to capture him got a traitor. Judas was a traitor, and he said, "I'll show you who is really Jesus. I will kiss him." Now, do you think Jesus had to let himself be caught? No, he didn't. But that was God's plan. And so one of the disciples near Jesus drew his sword. I don't want to miss this part. It's an interesting part of the story, but it's so dark to read those letters. One of the disciples near Jesus drew his sword out and cut off the ear of the slave of the high priest. But Jesus said, "No more of this," and he healed the slave's ear. When Jesus' disciples saw that, he would not allow them to fight. They ran away. The crowd took Jesus, I forgot how to say this name, to Caiaphas, I think, the high priest. Pretty sure that the disciple who cut off the ear was Peter. Pretty sure about that. I have to go back and check my Bible, but he was one of the really impulsive ones, and he loved Jesus a lot. And I'm pretty sure it was Peter who cut off the ear. After a mock trial, that means it wasn't a real trial, the crowd took Jesus to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, who ruled over Judea. He listened to their complaints about Jesus and offered to either set a criminal named Barabbas free or to set Jesus free. The crowd wanted Barabbas set free instead of telling them to let Jesus go. Pilate washed his hands, let the thief Barabbas go, and let them have Jesus. When he washed his hands, he said, "I wash myself of this decision." He wanted, I think, maybe he wanted to let Jesus go, but the crowd didn't, and so Pilate didn't. The crowd cried, "Crucify him!" So the Roman soldiers took Jesus out of the city to the place called Calvary, or Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. They had made a huge cross to crucify Jesus on. A great crowd of people followed Jesus and the soldiers. Some were enemies of Jesus, glad to see him suffer. They did many wicked and painful things to hurt Jesus. Others were friends of Jesus. Some women followed him and cried. Jesus turned to them and said, "Do not cry for me." They made him carry the wooden cross. And look here, they mocked him by putting a crown of thorns on his head. The soldiers tried to make Jesus carry his own cross, but soon found he was too weak from his suffering and could not carry it. They chose a man named Simon who was passing by, and they made him carry the cross to the place at Calvary. Jesus was weak because they had been so mean to him. When they came to Calvary, the soldiers laid the cross down and stretched Jesus out on it. They drove nails through his hands and feet to fasten him to the cross. Then they stood the cross upright with Jesus upon it. When the soldiers were doing this dreadful work, Jesus prayed to God for them. He prayed, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they are doing." That was a really sad, terrible time. But it was necessary. Two men who had been robbers and had been sentenced to die were led out to be crucified at the same time with Jesus. One was placed on a cross to the right side of Jesus, and the other was placed on the left side of Jesus. Pilate ordered a sign hung over Jesus' head, which read, "This is Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." The people in the crowd looked at Jesus on the cross and mocked him. That means they said mean things. They kind of teased, but in a mean way. The priests and the scribes said, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. If you can come down from the cross, we will believe in you." You see him up there? Do you think Jesus could have come down off that cross? You think he could have saved himself? Yeah, I think he could have saved himself. That wasn't God's plan. Even one of the robbers mocked Jesus, but the second robber scolded him. "Don't you fear God to talk like that?" he asked. "You are going to die the same way. We deserve to die, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then this man spoke to Jesus. "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "Today you will be with me in heaven." Jesus saw his mother Mary and his friend Mary Magdalene standing near the cross. They were filled with sorrow for him. Also standing by was his disciple John. Jesus said to John to take care of his mother. Then a sudden darkness came over the land. Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? It is finished, Father. Into your hands I give my spirit." At that moment there was a loud clap of thunder, and the earth shook like an earthquake. The Roman officer who had charge of the soldiers around the cross saw what had taken place and how Jesus died. He was afraid and said, "Surely this was the Son of God." That evening, Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man, on dark print again, a wealthy man who believed in Jesus, went to Pontius Pilate. He asked Pilate for permission to bury the body of Jesus. Joseph then took down his body from the cross and wrapped it in fine linen. Nicodemus, another man who believed in Jesus, brought precious spices, which they wrapped up with the body. Then they placed the body in a tomb, which is a cave dug out of a rock. They covered the opening of the tomb with a large stone. The following morning, some of the people who had helped to crucify Jesus came to Pilate. They reminded him that Jesus had said, "After 3 days, I will rise again." Pilate gave orders that the tomb be watched for 3 days to make sure that no one tried to take the body away. Early on the first day of the week, there was a great earthquake. An angel of the Lord came from heaven and rolled back the stone and sat on it. Mary Magdalene and some of the others came to the tomb, found the stone rolled away, and saw the angel. The angel told them not to be afraid. Jesus was not there. He said, "He has risen." Afterward, Jesus appeared to his disciples and stayed with them for 40 days. Then he was taken up into heaven. Today, when we celebrate Easter, we remember the day that Jesus rose from the dead. That's what Easter is all about, isn't it? And we'll have some more stories about Jesus and about Easter on other weeks. But I thought for Easter I would read you this book about the very first story of Easter. That's all I have for Sunday school today. Happy Easter.